Okay, so I haven't done a video for maybe 2 weeks or so, and the reason is that I don't want to show games that I played recently that I wasn't particularly proud of, or maybe the games were just bad or something. So instead of that, I found this game, nothing particular perhaps, but it was a game that I found in my database, and this game was played in March 2005. It was played on the internet, and I was black. I prefer to play black a lot because I think that one learns more about chess, how to defend, and so on and so forth when you play black. But some people might disagree. Of course, it's not bad to play white sometimes as well, but I like the challenge to be black. And since I don't care much about ratings and stuff, so I'll take my chances and I'll try out stuff. But of course, the following game, in terms of the opening, was nothing unique. It's been played many times, and I believe that it was often played by very high-rated players, like of course the world champion Garry Kasparov, Ng4, as I will show you in a little bit. And the time control was 8 minutes with 9-second increments, and I was a guest player this time as well as my opponent, so let's just take a look. My opponent was white. He played e4, I replied c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, and here bishop e3. This is the move, knight g4. He continued knight bishop g5, this old book, h6, bishop h4, g5, and instead of just going on about the opening, the point here is that, for those of you who don't know that, when black plays knight g4, it's challenging the bishop here on e3, and of course white can play moves like bishop c1, bishop c4, and even queen d2, so that if black ever takes, we can take back with the queen or something. And I mentioned the move bishop c4 for instance. Then white doesn't mind if black takes, but I don't think that bishop c4 is a very common move. So bishop g5, as my opponent played, is the most common move. Now black obviously cannot play the move e6 for 2 reasons. Well, first of all, it would hang the queen on d8, and also it would also hang the knight on g4. So black plays h6 to, well, kick away the bishop on g5, and here the most common move is, like as my opponent played, bishop h4, but the bishop can also retreat to c1, maybe a little bit passive perhaps, but I think it's quite common as well. But bishop h4, and here the move g5, bishop g3, and bishop g7. And I think it's quite this is quite an interesting opening for black, because it seems like black has a lot of initiative. I mean, he's pushed away this bishop here all the way from basically c1 to g3, and it's not very well placed, unless of course things start opening up in the center and stuff. And so one move for white here is h3, an obvious move, simply threatening the knight. Another move is f3. And then there is also bishop e2, and bishop e2 obviously attacks the knight, and if and when that happens, then black usually plays h5, and if it takes, bishop takes g4, h takes g4 is also playable, but I believe that it's not as good as taking with the bishop. So the game continued after h3. I simply moved my knight to e5. It's also playable, I suppose, to go to f6, but that would just block my own bishop on here on g7, because now he has a pretty nice diagonal over here. So I play back to e5, queen d2. I believe that we're out of book right now. Oh, a couple more. Knight beats c6, castles, bishop e6, and here the book move would have been instead of, let's see here, after knight b to c6, the book move would have been knight b3, but instead my opponent chose a castle, and I'll play bishop e6. I like the move bishop e6 because, well, first of all, it holds the d5 square, and usually, of course, white wants to put the knight there, you know, to have the control the b6 square, and if the queen ever moves somewhere, then white knight would also have the c7 square. And if white takes, then after f takes e6, the pawn obviously attacks the d5 square, and as well as the f5 square, which is kind of good. The only downside is that if well, if there would be a queen on or bishop on e2, then there would be a check here on h5, which in itself is not really a problem because black can also escape via d7, c7 and so on, or even f8 in some cases. The thing about the Sicilian is that it can be very aggressive and throw in all kinds of ideas. The point is the initiative, basically. So rook c8 takes, and here he took. I don't believe that there was no reason for that. Okay, I can't castle long anymore, but since the rook is now on c8, I can easily escape. f4 just takes, bishop f4, b5, b4, and initiative is the name of the game here, basically. The knight has to move, and now a5, knight g3, a4. I'll just keep pushing those pawns. Bishop b5, and just b3, and I don't care about losing a pawn here. Takes, knight h5, and just play bishop f6. There's no rush to take over here because if pawn takes pawn, his king can just go to a1, and there's no way to attack his king. But I took anyway, but only of course after moving my bishop. So he puts his king on a1, king f7, rook h to f1, king g6, queen c2, knight d4, queen f2, knight b3 check, king takes pawn, queen a5 check, king b1, and a sample variation instead of that. If king takes b3, this is a long variation. I didn't actually see that in the game, and I don't believe my opponent saw that either. Of course, he got made the next move, but of course my idea was that if we would have taken, it's very easy to see that white is in huge trouble here. But he didn't take. Okay, let's take a look at the sample variation. If takes, queen takes b5, king h2, a2, knight d3, and well, I don't really. It doesn't really matter what white does here. He's toast anyway, so to speak. So let's just say bishop takes h6, rook a8 check, king b1, rook a1. This is a long line, and finally on move, after a couple of moves, several moves here in fact, white gets checkmated over here. But he didn't do that, so he played king to b1, obviously overlooking the mate, so just queen a1 checkmate. So to wrap this up, let's take a quick look at the opening one more time. This is the knight g4, Sicilian B90, knight g4 as I call it, because that's what makes this, that's the most characteristic move. And like I said, bishop e2 is probably the most common move. h5, takes, sometimes h takes g4, but I don't believe that many players play that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this clip about Sicilian knight g4.